before Vayachulu, or even after Vayachulu, before Kaddish Kabul, then his face lights up fire. Gehenim Chas V'Sholom. One of Marikos. So serious is this that a person who talks out before Kaddish Kabul, or the din says too by Duchanin. The Gehenim Duchan, Gehenim finished Duchanin, so people already start to talk. That too, this is a very grave mistake, because in the Gehenim finished Duchanin, in Kaddish Sholem, there's always the Kaddish Kabul immediately afterwards. No one, not even the Gehenim, are allowed to move until after Kaddish Kabul. So therefore, Gehenim should stay on the Duchan rather than go off. Some shuls, they kind of walk off, everyone walks over, so there's Yeshua Azaku Baruch, to give the Gehenim a blessing for what they have done, for their blessing. To do before Kaddish Kabul, that's considered a crime. They must wait until after Kaddish Kabul before they can do that. Here too, the Zaydik Kodesh says you cannot do anything until after Kaddish Kabul. The Shaila about folding a talus. That's brought in Halacha, where the folding a talus is considered. Doing folding a talus, there's one thing that seems to supersede all these halachas. A man's fear for his wife. What can you do that? A man's afraid of his wife, and folding a talus Motzei Shabbos is done for the sake of the wife. A man folds a talus Motzei Shabbos, the very first malacha that he does, before doing anything else, that is a teva to favor for his wife. The wife has ease, her health, giving childbirth, so forth. This helps. This is a special segula for a wife that the husband holds the talus Motzei Shabbos. There is a day, Arizal, I believe, says that folding a talus itself is a mitzvah. He wasn't allowed to fold it on Shabbos, so we start the week with, specifically starting with a malacha. Do a malacha, folding on something which is holy. It's not with a mitzvah. That's his reason. It's brought that this is an item which is done for the wife. We're taking too much of our host hospitality, taking too much advantage. So anyway, we have established the fact that the Zaydik Kodesh says that a person, at least the Halacha, should not do any malacha, should not put a light on anything until after Kodesh, which means after Kaddish Kabul. We said the folding of a talus is something which is a mitzvah in itself, a segula, that should be preferably the first malacha that a person does. Trying to see to it that the first thing done after Shabbos, which is a malacha, should be the folding of the talus. And while we're on the topic, of course, we'd like to stress once more that it's not a minor item. You see, Chas V'Sholom, people folding talus on Shabbos, don't be misled. A lot of times the big machlokes come up about this, big ones in certain places among certain sects, where they fold talesim and they look for a tatum. Let's not look for things like that. The one Islam dinners that you're not allowed to fold talesim. We had that in Syrian Shin Beis and Chaim. Folding is osur. The shilas about folding on different creases or things like that. Best thing is the pshitus, tmimus, purity of a person who knows that he doesn't fold, he doesn't get involved in these shilas. You don't fold your talus, and it comes to Motzei Shabbos, you then have the mitzvah of taking a talus and folding it. It's a mitzvah, it's mitzvah. So, therefore, this should be the very first malacha that a person does Motzei Shabbos. That's whose, he and his wife, children have a echas yom rishonim. They should be zechet to keep the Shabbos properly, kilchosa, to end the Shabbos kilchosa, zechet to be mamshich from the Shabbos Kodesh Shefa for the rest of the week, the whole week, zechet to see in the rest of the week, the Yom Shekulei Shabbos, and that's a chus, we should see the Yom Shekulei Shabbos, the Vias Moshiach Kingdom Eidah, Amen. Shekulei Shabbos, then is a person who keeps the Shabbos late. There are some who hold Shabbos very late. They get Marich in Shalashudis. Once the Shalashudis, they sing Midas, they have a certain shul, they talk by the table, as the Rosh said at the table of Shalashudis, and they extend, have a line by the table, and it's Yisrael, that's the yeshiva. Shalashudis is a lengthy item. So you speak Kedushas, the holiest time. There, they sing all the speakers, have a long shir by the table, and they go wicked, and they finish the Shabbos much later than the average person, much later than the actual month. But for them, doing Dafmana is still Shabbos. What happens to a person who wants something done? Who wants Halacha done? It's well past Shabbos. That's 72 minutes, it's already an hour and 72 minutes. Long past the Shabbos is over, but he has not yet Tabit Mara. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to tell God to do Melacha, to Shabbos. What about that it's still Shabbos for this person, it's after Shabbos for a second person? Or for anybody else, because the time is after Shabbos. Is he allowed to tell somebody to do a Melacha for me? Or a fire, a light, carry something, write something for me, write something new. Shabbos, he's still eating Shalosh Shudas, tells me, write something. This is that if it's important for him, he's allowed to do it. Preferably after Shalosh Shudas, just before davening. He didn't daven yet, ready to daven. He can't wait till he finishes davening. He may tell something. Even during Shalosh Shudas, if it's necessary for what he needs right now, he doesn't need something written right now. He has to have, let's say, dark. Shul. Shalashudis in the dark, so he has somebody put the light on because it's already close to midnight, they're being marach there. In our places where they eat Shalashudis until midnight. That is permissible. When Shabbos is over, the Gemara brings that there's, the Gemara says, something when they say Shabbos midnight. It's a person who is sick and wants to be cured. One of the greatest cures, is to drink something warm, hot. So is Shabbos. Shabbos is over. Eat some nothing. Drink something hot. He goes up and says, "David Kodesh, Leifei the Shmuli Leiv, Chavesh that's Reisam, cures those who are ill. Chavesh that's Reisam, bandages their wounds, heals their wounds. The Chavesh, Sheteves, Amin the Maisoy Shabbos Kumukma." To be warm, it's like Shabbos is like cure. Moshe says that it's very important to drink, draw water from the well. It's like Shabbos. Because the cure that the Jews had in Midbar was the El Shel Miriam. The well of Miriam, the one with them, before this kept them healthy. This water was Berach HaFachos HaMechel. Especially cure sent in this water that kept people healthy and well. So every Mitzvah Shabbos, this well spreads all the wells in the world. The person who draws water from the well, Mitzvah Shabbos and drinks, draws from this well of faith. And so it is written. So it's brought by the Kolberg Mitzvah. Amos says that I have not seen anybody follow this custom. So Shabbos is just important. It's interesting to know about it. I think it is that we see that there are things about Mitzvah Shabbos that could bring about the cure. Always Shabbos. We should zecher to Chinese mitzvahs, Chinese to be the Shefa, Shabbos and Kodesh, which are Shabbos. This is very lovely. Shabbos itself is a cure. Bring the Shabbos cure into the week. The opposite, of course, is a fertility to see the Yeshua's performance from the aspects that we made up for the Shabbos Dinei Without Malchut. It is known that the first committed was eating Korean Sadas. It means that the first began so serious it brought about death to the world for generations to come until Kias Mason. Till Chiddush Olam, would have been no death. This caused it. You see how dangerous food can be. One, what was the sin? Eating something, forbidden fruit. But it was eating the Isra of Achila. It's so serious, a person could say, I can see big sin for you today. But eating something, how could that bring about very so dangerous? See that eating is not dead. That eating was actually the cause of death. Every person knows that each person's death was caused indirectly by this item of food. Of course, the Gemara says nowadays, everybody dies for his own sins, not anymore for the sake of elimination. But if there is a person who is that pure, or there were people who were that pure, more or less, they had no sins at all, still because of this item of food they died. However, there are certain tzaddikim, very, very few of course. First, let's analyze the fact that who ate from this Eitz Hadas? Was it one person and two people that ate from it? It wasn't. It was everybody. Adam Rishon was not one human being. Adam Rishon was a composite, it's a gigantic form, composite of all the neshamas of all the people, humans that will be born. Creation of all the neshamas of all child, put together in one single form, Adam Rishon, so that when they ate from the Eitz Hadas, everybody has a taste of this food. Therefore, each person has to pay for it. Of course, the Zaydik Kodesh asks, what fault is there? Why blame somebody with the tip of the finger? Nothing to do with this item. Of course, the answer is that the person, if he would have had the opportunity to feed it in mouth, he would have done it too. The truth is, they only by proof. The fact that a person does commit worse sins today. But again, we say there were certain tzaddikim who the neshama was there and did not partake of that forbidden food. Menachem said never was trained for the Eitz Hadas. Therefore, these tzaddikim have no relationship at all with that taste. Tzaddik was never trained tam chayt, never tasted. Look the word toyim tam chayt. Taste. The taste of any sin, even the first one, it's a matter of tasting, that too you taste. That tzaddik, of course, is completely pure, void of any kind of Islam. Now, the fact is that not every part of the body, any person tasted that food, that food. One part of the body never tasted. One part of the body never tasted it. And it stands to reason that that part of the body should not receive a death penalty. Every person must die. Every part of the body must die because death came because of this fruit. If a certain part of the body did not taste from that fruit, that part of the body should not die. That is the fact. There is the esteemed news. Tip of the spine, a small bone in each person. One is called luz, or it's called nasroi, or it's called Masur Ramor, and it's very close. It has a number of different names. And that bone, that luz, etzem luz, that bone is indestructible. The Gemara says that they tried to strike it with a hammer on a block of stone. The stone was smashed, the hammer was smashed, the bone remained intact. Why is this bone indestructible? Why doesn't this bone disintegrate and decay like the rest of the body? The bone cannot die because this bone never tasted from the Eitz Hadas. Therefore, this bone cannot die. Unless, of course, the person is that much in the Rosh Hashanah, and so forth, things like that. Of course, two, long discussions on that, but two is possible. Anyway, the case of a normal Jew, where he lives a normal Jewish life, and that bone remains intact, and that's where Tchias HaMesim comes from that bone. The bone is formed like dough, it's spread out and formed back, converts back to the original body. That is the origin of Chiyas HaMeisim, because the bone did not have any hana from the eating of the Etzadas, which means that Etzabuz did not have hana before Shabbos. When did that bone first have its first taste of food on this earth? When it's on Shabbos. After Shabbos came over, then it had its first taste. Therefore, Bava Malka is made too because of that Etzabuz. Etzabuz especially as a more completely thrives on this Bava Malka. So a person should be very careful not to miss the Sudas Bava Malka because he is depriving Hazashon of the Etzabuz. Always wash, at least if possible, some kind of anuchya, but it should be done sitting down. Regular Suda try to avoid this invading issue. The person's busy, he's going outside, and they saw his Shabbat. Whatever he does, the Malka should be kept. Give that a priority at all times. In addition to their son, I have to see this practice, except in many cases there are some who consider Bava Malka, they consider like a Sudas Yente, and they actually light candles at the table. Malkas neighbors on the table. This is important Halacha. There are some who feel this creates it by just mentioning the fact that knowing that it exists. Very important to know it exists, and in case you ever see a candle lit on the table in any home, it's very Shabbos. Not like Friday, the same as Friday night. And you know that you don't mock it because there is a mocker for it. You see that the Suda Shabbos is a very vital and very important one. We should observe it to the fullest mitzvah of the Suda to nourish the Etzabuz, and by observe it to Chiyas HaMeisim. You see with our eyes, first the Bias Mashiach Tenu, okay, Shabbos, the Yitzhak. We said that the kiruv Isser Shabbos Medaisa is to carry anything from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabban, or vice versa, or to throw anything from one Rishus to the other, or to take a person standing in a house and putting his hand out of the window, handing something to someone standing outside. That means he has made two items that are necessary for a kiruv. Shabbos. One is Akira, and one is Anacha. Akira means to take something from its place in the Rishus HaYachid. Anacha means that bring it outside and then to put it down. You must set it down before you chay. You have to have both. If you have either one of the two, there is no chiyuv. It's only osur, but pater. It's pater aval osur, which means it's isur midabon. Now, if a person, Moshe, puts his hand out of a window, takes something in his house, sticks his hand out of the window, he has already done half of the Isur. There is an Akira made, taking out the Mishiyachid, putting out the Mishiyachid, but he has not put it down yet. So he has started the Halacha. So far, before putting it down in somebody's hand, holding it, he has already broken an Isur Rabban, an Akira on Shabbos. If he did that, amazing, deliberately, then Aharon say we fine him, we punish him, penalize him, that he put his hand out of the window, he cannot bring it back inside again. He has to keep his hand out of the window at the Statue of Liberty, wait until Shabbos is over. Maybe a long time, the Shabbos is over, his hand might get tired. It might be one of the, so that the weights that they use for practicing weightlifting. But his hand stretched out of the window at arm's length, and keep it there until Shabbos is over. This is, if it is, amazing. If it's a shaking, yeah, put his hand out of the window or something, you don't find it. You don't have to bring his hand back. There are some who say, the Rambam, the Ran, the Ashkor, and the Acharon consider this Halacha Ma'aseh, that this is said only if he did this before Shabbos began. Pulling something out of it wasn't that heavy, naturally. There was something inside, and Shabbos began, and he found himself, it was already done, he found himself with his hand outside of the window. He was negligent, leaving it outside of him that long. And what does he do now? So we say that in a case like that, we find him. You cannot bring your hand back until 24 hours later. Leave your hand there and go to Shulchan while you can do it. But you cannot move, you cannot budge from that spot until Shabbos is over. Why is that? Because normally, no matter how light this thing is, eventually he will either not be able to carry it, or he'll doze off, the thing will drop from his hand. And after it drops, he can't stay that long holding onto it. So if it drops from his hand, that's the end of the Melacha. He now has the Hanacha. He made the Akida before, he now has the Hanacha. But since the Akida was made before Shabbos began, there was no Akida. So the worst that could happen now, if we find him and say, keep your hand out of the window, is that there will be a Hanacha, which is only half the Melacha. Therefore, we find him that, penalize him that way. Even let's say he's holding a flower pot and someone's walking beneath, and he gets too tired to hold on to it, stay put until this saga is over. However, if he did it on Shabbos, then the Aharon will not find him, not penalize him that strictly, too severe a penalty. Because what's going to happen? He put his hand out already. He already started the Melacha Deraisa. The Akida was there. We penalize him and say, stay put. He's going to drop it. That's going to be the end of Melacha is Chayav Misa. They finished the whole Melacha on Shabbos. He has both Akida and Ach. Therefore, he shouldn't say that we do not punish him in this case, but that he doesn't deserve it. We don't want to be the cause of his having broken, since he broke an Easter above the Mesa, he should not break an Easter Deraisa. We should cause him to break an Easter Deraisa. Therefore, we do not punish him for that, and he's allowed to bring his hand back in. The Chayyim adds to that point a condition, which also is accepted by some, that if he did this just before Shabbos is over, where it is not logical he's going to drop it, it's that close to the end of Shabbos, therefore definitely even Beis Mishen would admit that it's the whole desire that he might break an Easter Deraisa here, because it's that close to the end of Shabbos, he will not break an Easter Deraisa. We punish him and say, stay put until Shabbos is over. Gotta wait till Shabbos is over. One additional item to add to this whole series of halachos. That is the basic item that we mentioned previously. There are 4 Lishuyas. Shadabim, Shayachid, Shayachid Shadabim, and Kamalas, Halachim Betur. Halachim Betur is something which is higher than 10th Halachim. Inay Lishus Shadabim, Inay Lishus Shadabim. And then, that Halachim Betur, you're allowed to take something from Rosh Hashanah and put it there, or vice versa. Or it's Shayachid. Shabbos has no issue to take something from Rosh Hashanah or Shabbos to Halachim Betur and vice versa. So, therefore, since Halachim Betur is more than 10th Halachim in the Shulchan, the person lives on the 2nd floor, or it's very important to live on the 5th or 6th floor, stick your hand out of the window or something, deliberately, accidentally, put your hand out of the window, you made a Akida from your house, out into over the street, and there is no Isur at all. You bring your hand right back, because this is a Halachim Betur. Big Kiddush. Notice, very few are aware of this item. Of course, this should not really be done with tefillah. That's for many reasons. At least we know that if he did it, there's no problem bringing the hand back, and there's no actual Isur that has been committed. There's only, we said, more than 10 tzlachim in it. Where it's more than 10 tzlachim in Shushabim, and being a Halachim Betur, there's no Isur to transfer something from either Shiyach or Shabbat to Halachim Betur. Zecher to the Saturday Shabbos for Chosor, Zecher to the Yom Shabbos, the Vias Kashiach Kenam. Because of the fact that we are now just before third, we'll deviate and take up the topic, the union of the Seder Arba Pashas. There are 4 Pashas, 4 mafkiyas that we laid in the Torah for 4 weeks, 4 times in between Rosh Chodesh Adar and Rosh Chodesh Nisan. 4 special pashas. They're known as the Arba Pashas. In order they are Parshas Shkolim, Parshas Zohar, Parshas Torah, and Parshas Chodesh. This really gives a clear, concise definition of these reasoning. The first one, we'll take one at a time, Parshas Shkolim. That one is lame. That means a maftir. Lame. Parshas Kisisa, which deals with the Machzas HaShekel, the mitzvah giving Machzas HaShekel. That's laying on the Chodesh Adar, if it comes out on Shabbos. If it comes out during the week, Parshas Shkolim, and the Shabbos, Nevocha, Chodesh Adar. Shabbos is convinced is Chodesh Adar. This is in memory of the fact that every Jew had to give a Machzas HaShekel to the Mishkan, to the Beis HaMikdash, and the Chodesh Nisan, pay for the Korban Tumid. The Korban Tumid, which every Jew was supposed to be responsible for during the year. Payment for this was the Chodesh Nisan, the Machzas HaShekel, given on that day. Torah says, Shneer Mashkal, they announce. In fact, the Shkolim should be given out. This was announced once before, the Chodesh Adar. So in memory of this, we also lay the Parshas Kisisa, which deals with this mitzvah of Machzas HaShekel. Arizal says that the Haskalah, beginning of time, beginning of the year, is Pesach. Pesach is the first year of the year, beginning of the Adam. However, there's a beginning of a beginning. This goes back to Purim. This Purim is the Haskalah of Pesach. 30 days before Pesach, you're supposed to stop and jump at Pesach, which is Purim. The Purim actually is connected with Pesach. It shows how. Arizal said that he heard the Arizal more so that not just Purim is the beginning, but Parshas Shkolim is the beginning. This Purim is preceded by Parshas Shkolim. It's also part of Purim because Gemara said that the whole mess of Purim, like that Haman wanted to give some of the Shkolim to wipe out the Jews, had a Shalom. The Shkolim that the Jews gave outshone, overshadowed, and I'd say defeated the Shkolim of them. Therefore, Parshas Shkolim is the true beginning. The mitzvah of Machzas HaShekel, firstly. We try to give it today as memory of Machzas HaShekel, well, Purim. But what is the Machzas HaShekel? The word shekel is the gematria of nefesh. So, figure nefesh, the Jew gives the Machzas HaShekel, the theme is nefesh. Also, it means to remove the dinner, because shekel is also the gematria of the Chamisha Gevurais, 5 times the Shin Letzim, so the Chamisha Gevurais, and giving the shekel, the Jew removes the dinner, figure nefesh, gematria nefesh. At the same time, we say that there is the mitzvah of Machzas HaShekel. You don't give a whole shekel, you give a half of a shekel. Not only that, but this is so strict. The posek says, "Oshi l'yarda, v'yada l'yamid." The wealthiest person should not give more. The poorest person should not give less. Nobody can give more or less than we have a shekel to show that all are alike. Every single Jew is Oshi, the highest person. No matter how high he goes, l'yarda, you shouldn't think that he's that great. L'yarda, don't think you've got so much. Don't rise that high. It says we have Dala Yamid. Dala is the person who's poor. Doesn't mean money. One is poor. This way is poor. Nicer. Maybe you should not consider himself that low. Don't think if you're lost, Chassidut. Don't be Yayish. You can still come back and be the biggest usher. One word of Teshuva. One tear before Hashem. Hashem, I want to come back. Honestly, you rise to the greatest wealth. Post Hashem. But again, it's that all are equal. And therefore, the mitzvah is not each one gives a shekel, each one gives half a shekel. Show that you alone, no matter who you are, Oshi or Dal, you're nothing. You're half a person, which means zero. Half of an entity. 2 Jews together, and you have a whole nefesh. It's a whole life. The Jew separates himself from others and says, I'm not, I can handle myself. That's not good. If there is achdus, he relates with his fellow Jew. Two together, you have a whole shekel. This even is explained why it's called Machzas HaShekel. That there must be closeness to this canvas to the tzadik. A person who is not close to the tzadik is a Nosson. And the Nosson, the Gemara says, is called a mess. He's a corpse. He's dead. When
Russia, Yumas Russia. Yumas Hames. Russia was in corpses put in there. He was dead before he. Before he died, while he's alive, he's called Hames. Who is the Russia? One who is opposite of, away from, at a distance from the tzadik. He is close to the tzadik. Cleaves to him. He is a chai. He is truly alive. That you find in the word machzis. Machzis is spelled then. Ches, tzadik, yud tov. Not the middle letter is the tzadik. Then ches on one side, on the other side. The middle letter is the tzadik. The letter before the tzadik is ches, which touches the tzadik on one side. The second side is the yud. Ches yud is chai. The chai clings to the tzadik. Two letters that are a distance. The first letter mem, the last letter tov. Those that are far from the tzadik, not discussion of the tzadik. That's called mace. It's dead. This is the reason for Machzis Hashem that teaches. Number one, you must be close to the tzadik. Two, you have to know. Do not separate yourself. You have to be a Kodesh, you separate yourself from the Jew. Mitzvah, Machzis Hashem, tells us that the Jews must be Yuchad, bind together the Aharon. And they are Zecher to the result of the Akamas HaMishkan, which means the Dias, their own tzadik, the Yom Mikdash, which we failed to see later. Seder of the four parshas, we said they range from the Shpegish Adar till Nisan. The first one, as we explained, Pasha Shkolim, is on Shabbos the Shpegish Adar, or if Shpegish comes out in the middle of the week, it's the Shabbos Mevochim, the Shpegish Adar. The second one is Shabbos Pashas Zohar. This is the Shabbos just before Purim. The reason is that it says in the Megillah, the Yom El Niskolim Benasi. Niskolim Benasi means they are mentioned, then there is action. Well, first we mention it, Mitzvah Mechias Amalek, erasing Zecher Amalek, the Shabbos before Purim, and then immediately after. That week we have the Purim itself, Benasi, where the mitzvahs are done. The actual mitzvah of the Megillah, of the Simcha, the Sudas Purim, Shlach Monis, all that is done afterwards. Because remember it's here that the Shabbos before Purim there should be that it is Purim, the Haskalah, the mentioning of the Parsha of Mechias Amalek in the Torah, which is in the Reis. This is always on Shabbos before Purim, because Purim does not come out on Shabbos. As far as we are concerned, that's going to be Shabbos. For of course, the 2 days of Purim, one is the 14th day of Adar, which is the Purim for the whole world. One is the 15th day of Adar, which is the Purim for Yerushalmi, and those cities in Israel which have a wall around them, which had the wall since the time of Yeshua, or the city of Shushan itself, the original city where the miracle took place. They lay the Megillah on the 15th. They celebrate on the 15th, which is called Shushan Purim. Now, in order to understand, to know how to make these, arrange these days or dates, these four parshas, and if the Torah gives a key to it. We know that there are 4 days in which the Shpegish Adar can come around. The second part is Sabbath, Zayin, Days, Talat, Vav. Only on Shabbos, on Monday, on Wednesday, and on Friday. When we say the Shpegish, of course, we speak about the second day of Shpegish, which then is the first day of Adar. On those 4 days, you can have the Shpegish come out. Therefore, we have 4 parshas,
you'll have more than 4 Shabbosim between Shabbos Baruch Adar and Shabbos Parshas HaChodesh. If you have more, what happens to the other Shabbosim? And the extra ones, the ones in between, are called the Hafsaka. Hafsaka means there's a space between these Shabbosim, one without any one of the 4 Parshas involved. That's important. Not because of these 4 Parshas, the Shabbos especially, you have Hayat, Shachas, Hayat, and Musaf added in the first to the Parshas Shkolam, Parshas HaChodesh. You don't see Ar Avraham. You have to know when these Hafsakas will come out. There is a simon given for these Hafsakas. Simon is brief, abbreviation. The Shetevus is Sat2, Zayin Teslav, Boi, Beis Vav, Dad, Dalad, Dalad, B-U, 12 days Vav, or the Taz, Beis Tezayin. This is simon given in this way. If we said these 4 days when the Shvedish Adar come out, if the Shvedish Adar comes out on the first, Zayin is Shabbos, then when you have the very next Shabbos is already, which is the 8th, is already Parshas Zohar. Zayin comes out on Shabbos, that means that Parshas Shkolam is on Shabbos. Next Shabbos will be Parshas Zohar. The following Shabbos, the 15th of Adar, and then you have a Hafsaka. There's no Parsha then. The next 2 Shabbos are Parshas Torah and Parshas HaChodesh. Second simon Boi, Beis Vav, means that if the Shvedish comes out on Monday, then the first Hafsaka will be on the 6th day of Adar, which means the very next Shabbos will be Hafsaka already. And after that will be Parshas Zohar, followed by Parshas Torah and Parshas HaChodesh. Third case is that if the Shvedish comes out on Wednesday, then the first Hafsaka will be the 4th day, Dalad Adar, which means the very next Shabbos. You still have, again, 3 Shabbos in a row, Zohar, Torah, and HaChodesh. If there's one case, if the Shvedish comes out on the 4th, that's Friday, then you have 2 Hafsakas. You have the first Hafsaka is days, 12 days and 12, we said. First Hafsaka is days, the second day of Adar, which means that the day after the Shvedish is the first Hafsaka, because the Shabbos previously then Parshas Shkolam, and this is this year's case. This year, the Shvedish came out on Friday, first day of Adar. So Parshas Shkolam was the Shabbos before. The first Hafsaka was this past Shabbos, it was the second day of the month of Adar. And then the next Shabbos, which is this coming Shabbos, is Parshas Zohar, followed by the 16th day of Adar. That is again a Hafsaka. There are 2 Hafsakas this year. 12, and that on Friday, days Yudvav. On the second day of Adar, the 16th, you have the Hafsaka, followed then by the 2 Shabbos in a row, Parshas Torah and Parshas HaChodesh. These are the Simunim. You know, if you study this by heart, it's just a few short letters. You know, the Simunim, you know how to tell the calendar. It's sort of like Seder Ibor. When the calendar is going, they say to the Parshas, in case you have no calendar, you can't see when these Parshas are. Remember these 4 Simunim, and you know automatically exactly when the Parshas are and which Shabbos there are. None of these Dalit Parshas. This is the Seder to know these 4 Parshas. We said we are now in the second one, Parshas Zohar, which is the Shabbos before Purim, in which we say special ayat in reference to Mechiyas HaMalek. We should be zeichet to see with our eyes the Mechiyas HaMalek, Mechiyas Kol Soni Yisrael, see the Yeshua Kolis with the Kolis of Mechiyas Mechiyas HaMalek. Purim, Dinei, Arba Parshas. 4 Parshas. Cover the first 2. The first one was Parshas Shkolam. The second one, Parshas Zohar. That's the Shabbos just before Purim. And again, we stress the fact that Parshas Zohar, according to all days, is Midaraisa. And it is compulsory to every person to fulfill the mitzvah of Mechiyas HaMalek How? You can get a Amalek here and kill him, it's fine. But you can't. It's done today by mentioning the fact that Moshe Feinstein Amalek. It's the way it's supposed to be done. Moshe Feinstein Amalek. Erase the name of Amalek. There are some people who ask if you want to erase it, so why do you keep mentioning it? Why do you eliminate it? The answer is to erase Amalek itself, memory of the Ness, the fact that Hashem held battle against Amalek throughout the ages. This is part of our history. This is part of the Kasbei Hashem. They're also with it. But of course we have to keep mentioning it, saying if you mention any of the Nisim, they find it like that. That was Parshas Zohar. Parshas Torah is the Shabbos before Parshas HaChodesh. Parshas HaChodesh was the Shabbos of either the Chodesh of Menachem or Chodesh Nisan. Parshas Torah is the Shabbos before them. The purpose of Parshas Torah is, again, to remind ourselves about the fact that the Midbar, the one means of purifying a person who was Tomei, the worst kind of too much Shiva, 7 days, it's a mess. In order to purify him, he had to use the ashes of the Kora Aduma. This Kora Aduma was a very rare item, just a handful at a time. The second basement is just a few, the first one is just one. Mishabenu made this one Kora Aduma had to first be burned. And the ashes used for the purification process. Ashes, water mixed. The purification process of those persons who were tummy. Being in the midbar, they were all tummy. They had to come to the point of eating the cup Pesach. From Pesach cannot be eaten by one who is tummy. Understood? They all had to be prepared for this tara, purifying. The time for burning Kora Aduma took place just before the Chodesh Nisan, because Komas HaMishkan, the setting up of the Mishkan and the Midbar was on the Chodesh Nisan. That's when the Jews would be coming into the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan, temporary Beis HaMikdash, to bring the books. They had to purify themselves first before setting up the Mishkan, and therefore it was done just before the Chodesh Nisan. So we have not a clear before this tradition. That way they'd be pure to bring the cup present. Now that was then. Today we say in the Shalom HaKodesh for Seinu, the place of the action of the Paraduma, we have the Tefillah or the Torah. So he said Torah, the Gemara says that when you learn the Torah, Torah's Hakas, Tefillah, Shlamim, you learn the about these kabbonos, it's as though you actually are bringing the kabbonos. When you say the words, tefillah, the words about these items, it's as you speak about the kabbonos, you spell that your tefillah should be accepted in place of the kabbonos, is the equivalent of bringing kabbonos. Shalom HaKodesh V'Seinu, that by speaking, Spalat Hashem, as though we were not there, we are the wealthiest people out, because the poor person brings more flour, like birds, doves, pigeons. The richer ones bring lambs, goats. The richest bring cows, oxen. Shalom HaKodesh, that with our lips doesn't cost anything for service alone. Right Kavanah, we created entire oxen, herds of oxen, bring us kabbalas. So here, with our words, speaking, listening to the kriya of Kora Aduma, that is as though we're actually fulfilling the mitzvah of the burning of Kora Aduma and the tefillah on top of that, and Hashem himself to purify us, just as the Jews are purified in the midbar. That's a chus, becoming that pure, ultimately we'll see with our Razi Komas, setting up of the Beis HaMikdash by Hashem himself. We should be able to see that this time, before this Pesach Hashem, we see with our eyes the Yashua can't think of the Thanks, Purim, Vini, Megillah. It is that when we read the Megillah twice, once in the evening, and once in the morning. Both times, our meaning is that there are 3 brachas that are said before the Megillah. 3 brachas are Amikra Megillah, Sheyos Nisim, and Shechianu. The Shechianu has to be said for a mitzvah. It's Zman. Mitzvah that comes with Zmana, you say Shechianu. So we can understand why the Shechianu is said in the evening. The mitzvah, the mitzvah of the Megillah. Why is Shechianu said in the morning? Of course, there are other mitzvahs important besides Mikra Megillah. You have the mitzvah of Meshkoyach Monis, Matonis Le'avyonim coming up. You also have the mitzvah of Sudas Purim. So, these require a Shechianu. What's very important, very basic is, everyone must know that since the Shechianu is a chiyuv for each person to make, it means you are relying on the Baal Kaidei, it might see you with this bracha Shechianu. Therefore, it actually requires the kavanah of the Baal Kaidei and the kavanah of all those listening. Baal Kaidei should have in mind what the Shechianu goes for, and to have in mind that he might see all those that are hearing, and all those that are listening should have kavanah in mind when they hear the Shechianu in the morning, that this is the same mitzvahs, Shloyach Monos, Matanos Le'avyonim, and Sudas Purim. So too, throughout the entire Megillah, you have to have the kavanah for every word. Of course, you have that kavanah in the beginning. As you start the Megillah, the Baal Kaidei has kavanah. I'm now going to see everyone with every word. Each person is supposed to have a mind. I will not be Yitzhak with every word that I hear. You must hear every word, and if one word is missing, he's not Yitzhak. Therefore, you must have a chumash in front of you, or a Megillah, in case you miss a word, to repeat that word to yourself. Even though it's not a kosher Megillah, but this is different than a Sefer Torah. If you have a word missing in the Megillah itself, Al-Qaeda himself says it by heart, he's Yitzhak. He has many words, as long as it's not a whole inyan, or as long as it's not the first and last psukim of the Megillah. Above all, there must be kavanah to Yitzhak, must be able to hear everything, and therefore you must have silence in the shul. You should be zechet to the Mala, the mitzvahs, the shleimus, zechet to the simchas purim, the mapala for all the sons of Yisrael, sealing Yerushalmi and Aharon. Simchas purim, Inei Megillah, Shloyach Monos, Sudas Purim. In the reading of the Megillah, as we said, the Baal Kaidei must be mechaven to be mitzi every person with every word of the Megillah. Each person is to be mechaven that kavanah to be yitzhak with each word. In reading the Megillah itself, there are certain minhagim that are part of the Megillah reading. For instance, by Halacha, Kaidei raises his voice. Because that's the turning point of the story of Purim. That night, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the king, couldn't sleep. And that next morning, Haman was coming to get the seal of the king to kill Mordechai, R Nosson. And that very night, the miracle happened. That was the mess of Purim. The king couldn't sleep. He had this sefer as finished ready for him. And the Benapach, the whole thing completely changed, transformed to a point where there was victory for Mordechai and Mapala for Haman. That's why at that moment the voice is raised. And two, of course, the Gemara says the word Hamelech in the Megillah always refers to Hashem. The Gemara asks, we accept everything, but that night the king couldn't sleep. Is the child to say sleep? And this is right. He could not sleep means that there was Esteemed the Malach. Esteemed, there was an arousing of Rachmei Hashem, Rachmei Shemayim. Many times there's a Midas Hadin, is Matuach, it's stretched so taut that it's difficult to break through. When there is Rachmei and Esteemed, all the tefillos of the Jews then, and Tanis Esther, and Mordechai, cries and tears, is aroused. Not a Dosh Nasan Malachi. There was no more, the Chesed was no more dormant, no more asleep, but the Chesed, Midas HaChesed arose, and the nest blossomed forth.
you have the reading of the 10 sons of Haman. The word we use, Aseres, Haman, and then the 10 names of Haman. These are the 10 sfiras of Klipa. Every seed of a Kusha has an opposite, Mecha Klipa. These 10 were destroyed then, therefore it is customary to read these 10 in the Shema Achas, with one breath. You're not supposed to take a breath between. It means you have to try to take a deep breath first. Some people can do it easily, some find it difficult. So what to do is then to take a deep breath and then to read as quickly as possible, and if you faint in the middle, be revived to start again. But there are certain ones who are, some Balkredas are very fancy. They want to go into all the fancy stuff, Megillah, which they miss elsewhere. Here they want to go into all the stuff. What happens is that their voice gives out, they're dying by the 6th or 7th son, and they're trying to get to shore, get to the end of that page. You see them barely crawling along until they figure out at the end. They just get to Aseres. The word Aseres is the last one. Aseres. The word Aseres dies out. They fall asleep at the... Of course, the answer is that there should be less fancy work done there and more speed, but naturally reading correctly. The reason, too, is that plain shot is that the 10 sons of Haman were all hung together. This is a sign that they were not separate. The victory that was complete. Beginning to end, all 10 were hung on the same tree. That's the reading of the end of the Megillah. Of course, we mentioned that when the Megillah ends, you have to say the bracha immediately, all except the Balkeda, who first rolls up the Megillah. That's the reason the Magen is because it should be upset. Of course, there are some people who are very neat, meticulous. Things out of place, you just can't read properly. You can't. The bottom might say, what kind of slump is this Balkeda? He takes out how to do it in the Shul Megillah and the reasons. He cares about himself. Keep the peace. We have the Balkeda first roll the Megillah together. It's not considered a hefsek for the Balkeda. Anybody else listening to Megillah, using Megillah for the Megillah, then they should first say the bracha and then hold it up here. Now, the din of Shleach Manos, this is a halacha, which is one of the major dinim of Torah. The din is that you're supposed to send 2 food gifts, preferably means 2 types of food gifts. Not, let's say, 2 apples or 2 slices of cake. 2 separate types of food gifts. Because if it's 2 slices of cake, it's very simple. If you have 1, just cut it in half. And then you go further and cut that in half, and you can divide it for the whole city. So it has to be 2 kinds of food gifts, preferably. And these 2 food gifts, this is Mishleach Manos. It's not to give these food gifts to friends. Ishlereyehu is not necessarily to the poor. This could be even to a person who's wealthy, but some are wealthy but poor mentally. The main poverty is mental. And that, of course, there is no shortage. So there's no question of giving to the right poor. This does make, because this Ishlereyehu means to his friend. So giving these food gifts to friends, he gives this to the poor. Giving these food gifts to his friends is not enough. It must be sent. Shleach has to be through a sholiach. There must be a third party. Even if your friend is right next to you, you cannot hand it to him. You must say to a person who's 10 feet away, you come here and give it to my friend. The friend says, you're not talking to me anymore. We're not friends anymore. And that shows, of course, what he knows. As we said, this is a friend who's rich, but this is the halacha of the shleach Manos. Sending these food gifts, that's because there was the custom there. That custom has to be kept up. Many Yisrael's halacha to this day. thousands of years, we do not deviate from that custom. Again, the dinner of these food gifts, this food must be completely ready to eat. It cannot be something raw, like potatoes that are uncooked, or meat that's raw, fish that's not cooked. Those cannot be used for mishloach manos. There are some individuals who eat raw meat, but we're dealing now again with those who are semi-rich. So that they have to be food that is published, prepared, ready to eat. Like sweets, cake, fruit, wine. Of course, one got to be careful with kosher wine. Even though it shouldn't be kosher wine in this case, so what's the problem? The problem is that remember there's a halacha, the sending the wine. There are certain high school who say that the ayin esach is not just if the goy touches the wine, even if a goy sees the wine. Just looking at a goy's eye, looking at the wine, would make it shayla. Unless the wine is insured, it's immune. With the ayin mahushal, there's no problem. Regular wine, even if a goy's eyes look at it, Arizal brings that to the sichos and the power of the eyes. Eyes of tumah, the ayin hora. Ayin hora, of course, is the gematria tough. It's the Esau, the power of Esau on Molech. Esau's 400 men. They have a power at the eyes where they could just look at wine and already created a definite shadow. Not all place can say that it's straight, but surely we should be careful, beware of this if we're possible. The wine should be at least covered in a bag, again, unless it's yain mahushal. Even then, why let it go look at our wine, even if it doesn't have any harm, effect on it? This should be food that is ready to eat immediately. Then it's the mitzvah of mishloach manos. Now, since the whole miracle was through wine, miracle of Purim, Vashti lost the kingdom. Was a long sequence of acts. Vashti lost the queenhood on her head because of the Mishnah Yain, which the king made. Instead, Esther came into her place. Haman too had his Apollo through wine. Because what did the queen offer Achashverosh? Come to my Suda, I'm making a feast. What's at the feast that will draw the king? Wine. That's what's fake. Achashverosh, the Gemara says, was a very great, he was called again in between. He was neither this nor that. He was neither big nor small. He was neither a big chacham, nor was he a small tippish. The nation of Malach Tipesh, the Gemara says, so that the wine drew him. At this meal, at this feast, the wine, the Mishnah Yain, that's where she was able to win over the victory against Haman. And that's why, remember this, there is a mitzvah to drink wine, actual mitzvah to get drunk. Actually to get drunk with wine. Now this bedafka, in this case, bedafka, Arizal says that a person should avoid drinking wine for excess at all costs. Surely liquor. During the entire year, even at the happiest occasions, weddings or simchas, even Arizal said a Jew is not allowed to drink wine. We cannot copy those people, those individuals, Chassidut, who drink for excess and drink every day. That's not for us. So here we were warned that wine it cannot be anything like a person being an alcoholic if he is a Breslov. It's good. Yet, that's good. On Purim, Menachem said the mitzvah is not like some interpret the Gemara to mean that a person should get drunk until he doesn't know the difference between Orach Mordechai and Orach Haman. He can't tell which is which. So drunk is he that he can't tell. His mind is not clear. Adla Yoda. Adla Yoda, Moshe Feinstein explains many different forms. Adla Yoda, put the halachas at my time for now. But the point is that this Adla Yoda, this drunkenness, Arizal says, means literally. It's to get drunk literally. Now, this is true. This is fact. We find that the great tzaddikim in the past, the time of Moshe Feinstein, the others, Moshe Feinstein once said that the Kippur is a very easy yontif compared to Purim. Because you have to fast, so it's easy. You fast, you daven. Purim, you have to drink. That's a hard yontif. But he fulfilled it with difficult. Other great tzaddikim did that. They're great pure tzaddikim. Moshe Feinstein, for instance, years back there, he called before the first trip he drank. He went out to speak to Rabbi Yaakov, which he never goes to. He stopped the number 11 bus and said, "Take me to Ummah." This was